So apparently I set up the thing wrong. So welcome Sarah Montana to the room.
He put me out in the other room. I know that's weird, but hi everyone, Sarah Montana here. Thanks so much for joining us. We've got lots of people on here. We're going to get started here in just a minute. Today we are going to be talking about the power of AI in your real estate business.
Yeah, it is kind of a good cross section. Clearly, if it is just you, you will get value from this today. This is a little bit more kind of AI introduction plus some how to work with a team, right?
Yeah, you want stop sign?
Yeah, go to the second one. So the second one has to do with not agents that you have that are out producing, but do you have staff? Do you have people like, and we're going to count on this like team, even if it's a part-time person, even if it's a contractor, anything like that. Did it work?
Yeah, it wouldn't let me do. There we go.
Oh, there you go.
Okay, here's
so this is how big's your staff. And I want to know number of people, even though they might be like transaction coordinator that's like just part-time or that you pay as you go. But like the number of people you're interacting with, yeah, an agency counts as a staff, right? Anything where somebody's doing stuff that you aren't.
If you have like admin that are, handling finance,
virtual assistant, I would
bookkeeping, social media, coordination, marketing.
Perfect. So let's see. Yeah. So again, like we tend to have, I'm going to guess, more agents and staff, although you can see this number getting really big on the 10 to 20 when we start saying, who do you interact with? And this is really important because just because you only interact with them once in a while and they're like a third party or an agency, if you want to grow a successful business, it's still your business, not theirs. Therefore, you still have to create content and create processes and follow up with them. And there's a lot of back and forth communication if you want to get it right. All right, so we're going to end this poll and share it. And you can see, which is interesting, I would have thought we'd have more agents than the other, but I could see as a solo, like when you were doing this all by yourself, you had a lot of people you interacted with no agents under you.
Yeah.
Right. In fact, that was part of the problem on the first time was it was just you, right?
Well, and that's actually right now how I've kind of transitioned back. I've kind of gone from a solo agent with like staff members, and then I built my team to a larger group. And now I've kind of changed my business model where I'm going back to where I'm the main agent and I have a lot of staff people that are doing those auxiliary items.
All right. So our one last one here, you went back and launched this poll. So this is the last one. What's your biggest pain? And you could just pick 3. It says, what are your top 3 pains? I know you can pick as many as you want. Oh, wait, maybe I made it so it's only single choice. Oh, well, if it's only a single choice, you got to tell me your biggest one and assume that everybody else will have something that fits into your top 3. Now, pick your biggest pain and then over in the chat, put in your other 2. So go over to the chat and say, my other 2 pains are A and B. Not A, B. You'd have to tell me what it is, honestly. And
then it looks like a lot of people are answering lead generation. Are you talking, like, put this over in the comments. Are you talking about lead generation for yourself as like you are out there still selling real estate? Or are you talking about lead generation and you're trying to provide leads for your team?
Perfect. Well, awesome. We'll just give it one more minute here and let's see.
Processes. Lots of people are saying lead generation, recruiting agents. Interesting.
All right, very cool. So yeah, so we're going to jump in. Just, I know this is kind of weird. We should have started with an introduction. We're assuming that you've been on a webinar or gotten an email from us before, but my name is Ryan Kohler. This is Sarah Montana. We're kind of a partners in crime in disrupting the real estate world or pretty much any world we're in.
Ryan is not in the real estate space, except for now he kind of is because he's with me, but he is more in the hiring space. And he's really changed my perspective on how I was running my business, how I did hiring for my business, and just how I approached it in general. And I've just learned so much. So hopefully you can share some of your information.
So maybe Sarah could start, give us a little backstory of the story of let's see, I'll stop sharing the poll. Oh, wait, share results so that you guys can see the results. I've got kind of iPad going with the others so that we can see both. But the results, if you can't see them, was 50% said lead generation. And again, over in the chat, if you'll tell us, is it your own lead generation or is it team lead generation? And then it's pretty spread out. So leads for the team, but they're not following up.
That's a big one. That's so frustrating, especially as the business owner, when you're the one that's paying for the leads. That was one of my biggest frustrations when I had a large team as well.
All right. So maybe Sarah, give us the backstory on kind of your flow from I decided to get my real estate license because we were flipping houses.
So I was in the rental space. I owned about 70 rental properties. And it was kind of one of those like naive things of like, oh, I'm giving my agent so much money, I should just do this. But I was in a position where I was kind of ready for a new career move. So I decided to become an agent almost as like a hobby, and I don't do anything halfway. And so I quickly ended up buying my brokerage, and then ended up with about 6 or 7 agents on my team. This was in Montana. Back in like 2015. So things were it was a disruptive time, kind of like the way now is, back to the point where it's like when I bought my brokerage, we were still advertising in the newspaper. We were still, like this idea of having a text sign was just revolutionary. I did a lot of radio commercials. I did TV commercials. I did giant billboards. The way that we got, our information out there was a lot different than it is now. But I also was from that community. So I was well known. My name was well known. My family was well known. And so I was very successful. I did about 72 transactions in my first year. And that was without a transaction coordinator or, other staff members. I was overworked and it was not a good idea. I don't recommend it. But I learned a lot from having those experiences. And then I recently moved to Southern Utah, and it was in the middle of the pandemic, and I did not know a single person. I did not have a single friend. I knew no one. There were not like activities going on where I could go and like build my circle of influence. And so I had to kind of go another direction and look at a different approach of how I could start building my business. You
were also then a single mom.
I was also
so the idea of doing it all yourself wasn't going to fly from juggling all the balls, right?
Yeah, I had so much going on, and it was kind of one of those things. I felt like it was all on my shoulders of like make it or break it. I knew I had to do something if I wanted to maintain the lifestyle that I had when I was married. I had gone through a divorce, and so it was a lot to handle. But fortunately, I met Ryan shortly after I went on that venture. And those that have kind of watched me probably think I'm a little bit crazy, because I've definitely gone through like ebbs and flows in my business. I started having a larger team. I was an associate broker at one of the brokerages, and I've now kind of changed. I built a Facebook group that I now am coaching people, and we love to travel, and I've been able to transition my business into a life by design, the way that I want to run my business. And it might not be for everyone, but for me, it works.
Yeah. And I think that's, as we dive into this is kind of from a high level, whether you're an agent, whether you're a solo agent which is people that help you. Definitely solo agent that does it all yourself is not the smartest move. We'll just solve for that one right off the bat. If you think you're going to do everything, including transaction coordinator, that's not it. So you have the kind of solo agent, but I have a team of people that do the office, the back stuff, or you have, I'm going to scale my team. So when I met Sarah, she was in I've nailed my process. It's very efficient. I bet I can go get some more agents to throw on my team. Top recruiting agent here that year, right? And like just a nightmare.
Yeah, it was, just felt like I was beating my head against the wall. I felt like I'm a naturally motivated, like self-motivated person. And I was struggling because I felt like no one wanted it as bad as I wanted it for them. And I felt like I was giving them so much. I was spending so much money on trying to generate leads for them and giving them the right tools and, having someone there to do marketing and all those things. And yet they would say, oh, well, the leads are bad. But yet then I would go and call the lead and I would close it shortly.
Yeah, in fact, I've watched you lost 3 or 4 agents. You parted ways with 3 or 4 agents, and every single time it was the same story within 3 to 6 months. Well, I hopped in the system. I grabbed the leads that I'd provided them. I followed up with them. I got a listing. I got a buyer. I got every single time. So there is this problem of like, we build a company based off of us, or we build an approach. And now you add a team member and you're like, well, now I got to get that team to act like me. And let's be honest, if they were you and has invested in you, they wouldn't be the sub agent, they'd be the broker. They'd be trying to move that path, right?
Or on the flip side of it, I think sometimes, a lot of agents are like myself, where you're an outgoing, kind of an extrovert, and you think like, oh, I need to replace myself. And you don't realize that I have a lot of amazing strengths, but I have weaknesses as well. And so I knew that I needed to find people that, I have Ray in my business, my Biz Babes Army of Two, where she takes over and more than amplifies and makes up for my weaknesses. And so I feel like I learned a lot from you in that regard too, of making sure you're putting the right people in the right roles and not just throwing anyone because they're the first person that applies, or the first person that you think, I just have to get this filled now. I'm so much more careful now when I am thinking about adding something to my team or adding a role or any of those things. I do it way more cautiously now than I did before.
Now, secondly, before I jump into my part and kind of tell you who I am and what, I have nothing to do with real estate, although I buy and sell a lot of crap. She's my realtor, crushes it for me. But if you think about the other problem set that we talked through, like a dozen nights at pickleball, this idea of how is it that you can actually hire agents to work for you while you're competing with them, and honestly believe that you're going to help them be successful, or that they'll believe you're going to help them be successful when you're technically competing with your own team.
It felt inauthentic.
Yeah.
It felt like, and that was my goal with my first brokerage, was to become a non-competing broker. And I didn't quite get there, but I was kind of, piecing things together with the goal to get there. But I realized, after talking to you, it's like, I don't like this. I want to be able to fully give all of my information and share my best ideas in a very authentic way.
And that's also why we do these things. You're not.
Uh-oh. Are you guys there? Hopefully you're still there.
I think so. I think it's just
sometimes our, technology
too many things open at one time. There we go. Yeah. So that's the other part of coaching or consulting, or what we do with Agent Advisor, where we're like, oh my gosh, we're just struggling here. There we go. Is this idea of like helping somebody not in your market means it's not competitive. You could share all your brilliance, or better yet, when you're just randomly doing deals because this other model of coaching and helping and advising is your future, it lets you open up the wall, share it all.
Right.
And so now my background is very different, and this is why it's such an interesting combination. So I actually come from the tech world. I have a degree in accounting and an MBA, went to work for a tech company, and then I left there and jumped into the world of tech, the world of hiring, honestly. And so for the past 17 years, I've done the exact opposite. Building a tech company is very different. It is not for the faint of heart. It is not for somebody without money. You are either borrowing somebody else's money or squeezing like pennies out of dollars just to make it work. But part of my scaling was team-based. It was very much, I was not the salesperson. I wasn't going to be the salesperson. I wasn't going to do those parts. I was not competing with my people because I had to go do marketing and I had to go do product. And so, we scaled over the last 17 years, 10 years in a row on the Inc. 5000. But the real part here is, from an employee standpoint, I have an army. I mean, I've got 280 employees growing at, I think when I left Applicant Pro 6 months ago, our headcount was growing at like 30% per year. The revenue, because it was growing about as fast as our revenue was growing, which was 30% per year on $35 million in revenue per year. And so that idea, so from my standpoint, I'm much more process oriented of how can I do this? How can I do this in a way that I'm going to have to teach somebody that isn't me?
Yeah.
In fact, I'm depending on them not being me, and not being me means not as engaged because they don't own the company. They're still engaged, but nobody will ever be as engaged as I am because I own the company. Not being me in that I would be a terrible employee. I actually don't want to hire people like me.
I'm unemployable. I've figured out.
So we're going to jump in. So that's kind of, as we walk through, we're going to take kind of some of the ways that I approach building my, oh, and I got to clear this because last time I didn't do this. If you don't get that out of the way, then it ends up mucking up my recording. But so today we're going to talk about kind of like what's coming next in the economy and in the world. And if you know somebody that thinks they know what's coming next, the answer is they don't. Literally, they don't know. It just isn't that easy. And the reason why is because you have a whole lot of stuff going on all at the same time. And so my goal today is kind of unpack how I go about running my business using AI, how I go about scaling myself, how I go about buying back my time and my attention, how I go about creating a process from scratch, engaging new technology from scratch. Super interesting. 17 years ago when we started, Applicant Pro was the name of my company, still is. But when we started Applicant Pro, we were a nobody startup against Goliaths. I mean, the three main people I was competing with at the time were Taleo, Connexa, and Brassring, all three public companies. And I was literally like, had never even built software before. I'm not a programmer. Had no hiring experience. I was 28, I think, jumping into this world where everybody made fun of me. And over the last 17 years, I've competed with Taleo that became Oracle, and I still compete with them, and Connexa that became IBM, and SuccessFactors, and Google actually bought somebody and stepped into our space, and Indeed. And so this idea of how do you compete in a chaotic marketplace when you're the little guy all the time? And so as we go through this, I can tell you I'm a growth hacker, which means I'm constantly looking for a way to optimize myself, get more done in less time, but also find a way to get my employees to be motivated to do more in less time, which is the hard one.
Well, and he's just so good about systems and processes. I know when I was building my company, again, I was a single mom. I know there are a lot of women in this business, and there is a lot of mom guilt and things like that. And I had this paradigm shift that you allowed me to see that it was okay to buy back my time and to be, to be able to leverage and, different employees or resources or tools. And I think if you can make that shift, I always felt like, oh, I'm a business owner, I'm whatever, but there's something vastly different from having 10 to 15 agents to running a giant organization. And so being able to kind of get to see the inside workings of how you create a playbook. He does not do anything without a process or without a system. And it's been a little bit of a learning curve of him like kicking me of like, why did you not write this down? Or why did you not create a video? Or why did you not, why are you teaching this again? Type of thing. And
I think I blur the lines between business and life
all
the time. My lines are always blurred. And what I mean by that is like, if I believe that I should focus on the highest and best use of my time at work, I believe the same thing at home. It's actually cheaper a lot of times for me to pay for somebody to do the laundry than it would be to hire another assistant at work. And it would, no matter what, at the end, as the entrepreneur or as the business owner, my time is my time. There is not like this clear cut, like work time and home time. It's all my time. Therefore, whatever I have to do to optimize my time, I'm going to do. So Sarah's going to jump in the other room and monitor the chat, be able to chat back and forth. And I'm going to run through what's coming because I believe what's coming is utter chaos.
All right. So I'll be in the other room.
Yeah, she can't get her camera to work, but mine does. So yeah, I believe what's coming is utter unpredictability. That's really where we're at. If you're just in the real estate world, you may say, oh man, like things are shifting and changing and market rate or the loan rates are going up, et cetera, et cetera. But you don't live in a vacuum. You live with all of your buyers and sellers being in the normal world of the economy, of the labor market, and working in tech and working in manufacturing, working in all these other things. And so while you might look at the real estate world and say, oh, this is fairly simplistic. We look at mortgage rates, we look at supply and demand, et cetera, et cetera. That might work when the other part, the rest of the economy is stable, like it's growing predictably, or it's even declining predictably. And there's not like, we're just making small changes. But when the entire economy starts making massive changes, like what started with COVID used to be this like every decade cycle. And now it looks like maybe we're dealing with like an every couple years cycle of massive change. And that's really what's coming out. And part of that, to be honest, is AI. And so as we get into kind of like what's changing, at least in my world, in the tech world, you've probably seen all the layoffs in the tech space. You've probably seen a ton of drops in stock values for public companies, especially as we shift from growth at all costs to sustainable, profitable growth. And a lot of the layoffs in the tech companies, like I know Indeed just laid off yesterday, pretty much everybody has. My team hasn't, but everybody else seems to have. But if you look, especially the big companies, it's not that they're laying off because they're greedy, and it's not that they're laying off because they're failing. It's that when you switch from all growth to profitable growth, they have to realign their values and mission. And number two, that you might not see as a small business owner, is big companies can see what's coming next. Now, they may not be able to see it from they know exactly what will happen. They're just as bad as the rest of us at guessing what will happen and positioning themselves, but they definitely have a lot more data to be able to see what's coming next. Take Indeed as a great example. Indeed just announced like 15% layoffs of their company. And their reason for it wasn't we're not profitable. It wasn't we're running out of money. It wasn't anything like that. Their reasoning was they could see out in the future, because they have so much data, that the number of postings per employer were going down and the sponsored postings per employer were going down. What does that tell them? Well, it tells them that hiring is going to slow and they're in the hiring world. And so you see big companies, if they either can see that trend or they can foresee, especially as tech guys, we kind of get an insider's view into the world, like we're 5 years ahead. If we go hang out with tech people, we're way, way ahead of the curve on adopting stuff and playing with stuff. And so we can see, hey, something disruptive is coming. Therefore, pull back the cash, store up the energy, because we may have to pivot quickly. And so that's really the reason why there's so much. Now, this is the problem with real estate. Oh man, successful accountant, I should have fixed this. This is actually funny. It's actually good that it's there, because this is the same flow I use for accountants or HVAC or plumbing or real estate. On the left is when we quit our job and we go start our own business as a solo entrepreneur, we're usually a doer. We're doing the thing. We have skills, knowledge, experience of doing. It's very similar to Sarah. She did all of that real estate stuff. She got really good at doing it. But as soon as you transition and say, I'm going to scale, whether you're growing a team of agents, whether you're growing a team of support staff, when you're growing a team of anything, I'm going to scale. Suddenly you go from the quote is like working in the business versus on the business, which is really easy to say, but most people don't understand what it really is. It's, do I have confidence doing these other things? Like generating demand or lead gen is totally different when you're generating it for somebody else than it is when you're generating it for yourself. It's very easy for Sarah to go out and network and send content and stuff when it's her sending it and her following up. But as soon as it suddenly switches and she's doing the marketing, but somebody else is following up, then there's problems. Same with talent. Hiring is nothing like what you think it is. And when you start and you're now the boss and you expect, it's totally different than hiring people when you're both employees. Being the boss that hires people is way, way different. And then finally, offering differentiation. What is my unique culture, brand? What is my unique process? How am I going to optimize it? How do I optimize operations and process and flow? Totally different things. And so what we usually find is business owners will grow to their cap. And their cap is when they've outgrown what challenges they're facing are things they're not confident in solving, either because they've never done it before, they've never seen it done before, they don't know how to do it, they can't see beyond it, or even worse, when they're in an echo chamber of people like them who are solving it the wrong way. Small guys tend to solve things the wrong way, or they're trying to copy big guys. Big guys solve things in ways that don't work for small guys. And so that's the big challenge. Now, AI could be the solution to this, and I believe it's what's coming next. But before we actually jump in, and just to kind of warn you, this is our intro webinar. I'm going to unpack the way you think about this, the strategy, the paradigm, the frameworks for it. We're going to spend a little bit of the time. I'll actually get into ChatGPT and show you some of the flow. The follow-up to this, though, will be a whole series of additional videos where we actually dive in and show very specific things. How do I create marketing content for my team? That's a good example. But you need to understand that what you're hearing isn't reality from what it will actually look like. I believe AI will be the solution. The very first problem we have to do is we have to set our expectations properly. And our expectations of AI are very similar to what our expectations were of the internet when it started or when email started. It was viewed by the normal world as this weird, obscure thing. And the reason why, I wish I had the slide for it, but the reason why our expectations are flawed most of the time on this kind of stuff is really simple. There is this, actually it's a bell curve, sorry. There is this bell curve called the product adoption or idea adoption curve. It basically says if you take a population of people, that a small percent are going to end up out here in the front. They're going to be like leaders, the people who just try all kinds of crazy stuff. And people back here will be skeptics. And you have early adopters and late stage adopters and all that kind of stuff. But most of us are in here in the middle. But what's important to understand about this when we talk about it is the news media or just random people in your neighborhood, you need to understand what they are before you listen to their opinion about something as new as AI, just like the internet. And so that's our very first step is, who are they as individuals? It's as easy as looking at their phone. Start with that, right? If they're running a brand new iPhone that just came out and they're driving a Tesla and they have all the new technology stuff and they don't shut up about it, it probably means they are up here in how they adopt technology. And the real question isn't, do they have an iPhone today or a Tesla today? It's when did they adopt? Were they the one who was buying technology that didn't work right because they just wanted to experience it and play with it and be first? Or are they the ones that are lagging behind? They're skeptical or they adopt with the crowd, right? This is the adoption where you really start to get a lot of adoption, both early stage, late stage, et cetera, in the middle. So the very first thing when you're trying to figure out what the future is, you have to look at somebody's opinion and say, where are they? What's their motive? Let me give you a couple examples of why this can be so weird. A lot of times the news media, for instance, is going to play on fears, and most fear about new technology comes on the backside of the curve. These people are afraid of it because they lean more skeptic than excited. Another way might be to think about this. This tends to be abundant versus scarcity. Or they have a low risk tolerance versus high risk. Now, it's going to make sense why I'm spending so much time on this in just a second here. So here is kind of the way why this matters. If you listen to the media, they might be feeding the skeptics. And to be honest, it's really easy to feed the fear of this side. And that is because when you say AI is going to replace 80% of jobs, everybody freaks out like they're going to lose their job. What they're not saying is today's jobs. What we don't have is what tomorrow's jobs will be created. You see, the ATM machine was going to get rid of all tellers, and yet the world grew, and therefore we still have a teller shortage. So clearly ATMs didn't do that. It's that if we look at today's situation and say this one big thing is going to change, we're not measuring how everything else will change along with it. Now, here's the flip side, and the one that's actually even that feeds this beast is over here on this front side right here. This is where we have startups and VCs. Now in Silicon Valley, this curve is pretty much everybody on the front side. And what that means is that as a startup, as a entrepreneur who's trying to pitch for funding, I pitched for funding, it's my job to tell the VCs that I'm like riding the rocket ship of a transformative, disruptive change that will change the world. And most startup founders believe they are going to change the world, but only 1% of them actually do. But they all have to say they're going to change the world in order to get VC funding. Because of that, when they turn around and start pitching the average customer, they take that same approach to pitch the average people, And what do you think happens? They get pushback. And they don't understand why, because they haven't realized that they live in a bubble of that's driven by early adopters who overhype for it. So what does that mean? Well, let's start with AI as a good example. When somebody says ChatGPT is evil, AI is evil, the very first thing on it is say, wait. What's your perspective? Where are you coming from? Okay. If you are a teacher, then let's just assume that you're viewing this through the lens of your goal in life is to help students learn, how to explain, how to think for themselves, and you view AI as thinking for them. That can be totally valid. Don't have a horse in that race. I can tell you my 15-year-old knows how to use AI because I believe in the future, it's going to be the person who's best with AI that does well, especially in the next 5 years. Now, on the flip side, and there's nothing wrong with their opinion about it, but if we took and applied school rules to business, we would have an instant problem. Just think about the last time that you created a document like a resume or a job ad or anything like that. I guarantee you didn't start from scratch. I guarantee you went out to Google, you searched for a template, you borrowed somebody else's, and you adjusted. In the business world, we borrow and adjust, which in school equals cheating, right? Your goal in school is not to borrow somebody else's book and then just adjust it enough based on your needs. And so this is the first problem. You have to think about, where is it coming from? In the business world, this is not cheating. In the same way that I borrow information from my competitors' ads and then change it to fit my own flow, that's not cheating either. Now, it might be dumb if I directly cheat, or I directly borrow and don't change it, but I'm punished in a different way. I'm punished not by getting a bad grade or getting called to the principal's office. I'm punished if my clients hate it. And so that's the first part, is this cheating? The second part, you have to understand, anytime we have a massive change in technology, and we're talking about, this is the kind of change, and for those who are a bit older, let's go with email. Let's go with the internet, meaning access to the web and websites and stuff. Let's go to mobile, meaning the iPhone. And we'll come down to say AI. These are major transformative changes. And if you went through, in fact, you could go before this might be the cell phone, right? Major transformative changes. If you were alive during any of these, or not just alive, but like a teenager, especially a college kid, during any of these transitions, think back to what your parents said, or the older generation said about this new technology. Oh, it's a fad, it's a dumb, it sounds lazy, it's cheating, etc. They all said the same thing, once again, because while clearly there is a generational divide, your next generation will skew a little bit more. It doesn't mean that they're all early adopters. It's not a kids these days will embrace all tech. They're going to still have skeptics, but it's at least pushed forward a little bit. But if you think about each of these things, if you went back, in fact, I've got a new client that I'm just working with right now, newspapers.com. You can go back and see what was said in the news at a given time. I'll actually run this and throw a video together. If you go back to these events and go read the news at that time, you will most likely hear the same stuff about it's cheating, it doesn't work right, it's whatever. On AI, you can put electric cars when Tesla came out. Oh, I can't spell. Right? When Tesla first came out, you'll hear this same thing. I have a little curve on it. And so this is the other part. Remember that you've got to decide yourself. Am I an optimist? Am I abundant? Or am I scarcity minded? Am I afraid? The way you think about this is to say, do I believe that I have to claim value? Meaning there's just this one pizza pie here and there's only so many pizzas? Or do I believe that I make pizzas and can create pizzas as we go, that I can create value? So that's the very first part. Now, my goal as a business owner is I am a creator, not a consumer, and not somebody who just claims what's there. I am a creator. Therefore, I believe in creation. I believe that every change that happens will be followed up by a bunch of creators like me creating a new future that hopefully will be better than the last one, but I guarantee will be different than our past and different in ways that we aren't predicting. Most likely more optimistic than pessimistic ways. But in today, we think of the future, especially massive change that impacts our ability to work or make money in a very pessimistic attitude. So I sent this email out inviting somebody to one of these sessions, and this is what I got back. Gives you a great example of it. Not only will I never use chat AI, I firmly believe anyone who does is a fraud. This, I believe, was from either my HR or accounting list. And so just think about that as, now, if this is true, as an educator, that's impacting part of it, and HR or a writer or somebody like that is impacting part of it, you have to recognize that pushing this out yourself, you'll have to check your shadow, right? Check your reaction and say, is this a real reaction or not? And even if that is possible, that it could be scary, I'd be better off going forward, leaning in. Number two is when you start engaging your team. When you ask them to do things, you have to look at it in the same way. And here's the best way to understand it. If I pay straight commission, or if I pay like hourly salary, right? We'll say we kind of have this paradigm of how we pay our people. I want you to think for a second about what my motivation is. My motivation over here is efficiency, right? Because I'm getting paid the same amount of money, regardless of how much effort I put in, I want to take a shortcut. That's what your agents want to do. They want to take a shortcut. And you'll hear it all the time with new agents when they're saying, does that mean I'm working for free? Hey, you need to go out and knock doors or cold call, or you need to lead with value and share knowledge without getting paid for it. Does that mean I'm working for free? Well, yes, if you were an hourly employee, you would be working for free, but you're not. You're a business owner. That's an investment. And so because of that, we're driven to efficiency. Now, what does that mean about your sales reps? Well, if you give them AI and some of the stuff I'm going to talk about today, they're going to have a bad experience with it because they won't be willing to put in the effort to dial it in from a quality standpoint. This side will create almost every time a quality problem. They'll jump the gun. Sarah will tell you, I kick her on it all the time. She's so focused on efficiency that she doesn't balance it with quality sometimes. It's just part of that mindset and flow of growing up in that sales type position. Now, on the other hand, you have hourly people, and these guys, they're looking to drive their hours up because it's how you get paid. They have zero motivation to be more efficient, because if they save time, they're saving you money, not them. If I'm an accountant, I used to always have this problem when I was in accounting. I would go in and get a job at 40 hours a week, and suddenly I'm like, I can do this in 20. But I really didn't have a motivation to do it in 20, because then I'd either be given more work for the same pay, or I'd be given less pay because they'd make me part-time. Now, I had my own way of navigating that, but I had to be very abundant focused of, I'll find even more value I can create. But the average employee is not going to be focused on efficiency. So they might be focused on quality. That would be a bonus, but also they're going to be focused on their value that they're bringing. What I mean by that is, or maybe it's not their value, they're going to be focused on claiming credit. Here's what I mean by that. If you go to your bookkeeper and say, I want you to start using AI, which will save me money because I won't be paying you as much, understand saving you money equals taking money from them. That's a problem. Their pushback is immediately going to be, it won't work. That quality isn't as good. Why isn't the quality as good? Because you're suggesting that this thing, this computer, is as good as me. So you're not just offending me by saying, hey, this is less money for you. You're also offending me by saying, I think you could be replaced by a computer. Now, whether they get replaced by a computer in the future, 5 or 10 years from now, is immaterial. But by leading with that approach, and being blind and not having empathy to it, you'll get a lot of pushback. Trust me, I've been teaching people about AI for the last 6 months, which in my world, just so you know, I've spent the last 6 months, I left my company pretty much nonstop in AI. I think between Sarah and I, we probably each have 1,000 hours in ChatGPT at this point. And so that's nonstop that, but I've struggled.
You guys think he's joking, but he's not.
Yeah, no, like literally we're talking probably 40 hours a week, especially the last 3 to 5 months, just in ChatGPT, just messing with it. And that's not throwing prompts at it and pulling content. That's literally messing with it as I show you my approach. Because again, figuring out if everybody else is focused on efficiency and it's coming at the expense of quality, I spent the last 15 years creating content from scratch, typing it up, video recording it, creating it all on my own, all that kind of stuff. And so to me, my content, the quality of that content has been my differentiator in my world. And so I'm very picky about that. So here's one of the reasons why adoption is so hard right off the bat. The way it's being pushed on us is like the frog in the boiling pot, right? And so we think about that and we say, look, if you want to boil a frog, you should turn it up slowly, right? But the tech world, the VCs want to hear that they can boil the ocean tomorrow. So because of that, they lead with this like, hey, guess what? You're going to go from 0 to like 100% improvement like tomorrow. And they need to do that to make it seem they think that they're teaching you this because that would be scalable for their company. It would be the VCs like to hear it, all this kind of stuff. What they don't get is while this sounds sexy to a VC, this sounds scary as shit to everybody else on earth, especially when we go back to that adoption cycle. These people, this sounds sexy. These people, it makes them want to like go find a bridge to jump off of. They freak out. The problem is they're not freaking out because it's dangerous. They're freaking out because they can't see the future. And so this is part of our challenge. That's not the way to get adoption. What you get is rapid adoption by these guys and a lot of feet dragging by the others. And honestly, what you get is a lot of noise, constant bickering and noise back and forth in the media, and a lot of resistance to the change. So what it should look like instead is this flat line right here. And it's probably actually more like this with those technologies because it takes a while to get enough normalcy until you start getting rapid change. You could look at crypto this way or the internet or Facebook or anything like that. That's what it normally looks like, is that the world and companies across the board are investing in adoption. Part of the reason why the improvement is so low is because they have to figure out all the kinks of it, right? Like you have to figure out how to make it work the right way and how to adjust it. I wish it looked straight up and the right, but here is what we'll call help looks like. Help should look like building a staircase, not expecting them to jump over the bridge, over the thing without a bridge at all. That's what I found in my world. This is how I grew my tech company, helping risk-averse HR people. I went and found where they were starting, and I just gave them one stepping stone at a time to get them to where I wanted them to go. It meant that over time, I could get them to progress. Yeah, I'm going to show you how ChatGPT works. I'm just telling you that if you don't, you're losing it. All right, I'm going to jump ahead, but Christian, let me tell you why the reason for that is right here. When it comes to marketing, when it comes to training, when it comes to anything, quality is vital. And the number one thing that we're seeing in ChatGPT land is this right here. What does it take to create quality content? Not just fast content. If you wanted fast content for your videos, just go copy your neighbor. Like that would actually be faster than AI. Literally, like if you wanted to just create a video that was fast, just go to YouTube and download the transcript. You don't need to create any new content. Just go copy somebody. And that's what the problem is assuming how this works. So this is where we're going to jump into ChatGPT and it'll come together of why I'm spending so much time on this. Everybody wants fast, whether it's weight loss, whether it's getting rich, whether it's improvement, they all want fast. And this is what fast looks like in ChatGPT land right now. We think that step one, we go get our login. Step two, we buy a big giant database of 100 plus prompts, and then we take the content and we publish it immediately online. This is what is being sold to the world not by ChatGPT, but by everybody who's selling some type of training. Just so you know, Sarah and I don't even have training to sell. But this is what's being sold because it's what everybody likes. Business owners especially like to hear, oh, this can be so fast and easy, I can just call it in, basically. I can borrow somebody else's work and make it work. This doesn't work. And the reason it doesn't work for one simple thing, imagine instead that ChatGPT is an employee. You just hired a brand new assistant. Would you jump right from hired to go and do this thing for me and full send it to your clients? Would you literally take a brand new assistant, have them write an email and full send it without even reviewing it? Probably not. The reason why is you need insurance. Now, the likelihood, even if you had the smartest assistant ever, let's say that you hired an assistant with a PhD who'd read the entire encyclopedia. If you ask them a vague request, please go write me some marketing content to send out on my blog, they have so much knowledge that the likelihood that they bring you back what you were expecting is insanely low. And this is our first number one takeaway. I'm sorry, but I can't just give you a prompt. No matter what, you can see they're selling them for like 50 bucks. Cool. You can go and buy them, and those prompts are great, but they're not going to actually end up with awesome content. They're going to make it fast, but not great. When it comes down to making it great, these prompts are right here. And so if you go out, get a login and just jump right in with a prompt, you're literally starting at step 5. There's a reason why all of these steps are here and why this one right here is on it. And that's because you're going to get out of AI what you put into it, especially in the early days. And so if you want great quality, then you can't just perform 2 out of 7 steps and expect to get it. So I'm going to show you what that actually looks like. Are there shortcuts? Yes. There are ways that you can invest. You can buy prompts. Just understand that prompts are not the end or the beginning part that you're missing. You can buy better software. Something like Jasper actually has some of that stuff built in. It still doesn't do it the right way. You can hire a contractor or a consultant. I believe that's what you're going to see over the next year. Business consultants like me showing up and saying, hey, I can map the AI for you. But if you're not going to hire a consultant, then you're going to have to take charge of jumping through the hoops that says it works. And this is like my new favorite movie, clearly like big fan of Top Gun. But if you think back about just the one business lesson from this moment in that movie. The belief that it would work didn't exist until Tom Cruise went first. So my biggest shortcut, whether it's in my business or training somebody or whatever, is I always go first, especially because it's less risky for me. As a business owner, if I think AI is going to change the world, just understand dumping that on one of your employees and saying, go figure out how to use AI to work yourself out of a job. There's a huge amount of risk there. You got to go first because you don't have that same risk and you have huge reward. So as we jump in, what does that mean? AI can do a ton of stuff for your team, but it's limited based on what you believe it can do. So your belief or your belief in what it can do will limit what you can get from it. That's number one. Number two, it's limited by your willingness to invest. And this isn't money. It's time and energy testing and learning how to make it work. There's a reason why I've invested 1,000 hours into ChatGPT. That's my investment. The reason? Because I believe it could do amazing stuff, but I need to invest my time to figure it out. Now, what kind of content can create? Just think about your entire business. All of these things from demand, meaning marketing, meaning sales scripts, meaning follow-up sequences, anything like that, responses to different things, listing, presentation decks, anything in the demand side most likely comes down to, I need to come up with a strategy. That's on you. I need to come up with content and I need to somehow distribute that content. Same thing happens on the offering side. Same thing happens on the talent side and the operation side. Almost all of it comes down to identify the strategy, map it out and come up with good content, figure out how to distribute it so that it happens consistently. So today's your lucky day. I'm going to show you how I go about doing it. And Christian, I'm sorry it took so long to get here. And Sarah will tell you she gets sick of me explaining it this way too. But there's just this one simple problem that I've found. People who want to jump to the end up jumping to the end. And when you jump to the end, you get marginal results, and that's what we're seeing. Or you get a flash in the pan and it dies off. Because here's what's going to happen. If you jump to the end and you use this quick and easy 3-step process, at some point in the very near future, your content's going to sound like everybody else's, and Facebook's going to block it and Google's going to block it. And the reason I know that is because the person reading your content is not going to love it. And that's the basis that Google uses. Will people love it? And when you put out the same content as everybody else that's very vague, because you didn't put in the time to make sure you put in great inputs, then at the end of the day, it gets blocked. And so that's part of why we spent so much time on it. Is I'm going to walk you through the right-hand side of this of how I go about doing it. I'm going to jump into ChatGPT and actually show it, but there's actually some additional steps. So I want to talk through them. Number one is I have to create my backstory and I need to feed it, or we'll call this right here training, right? I need to figure out how to train the backstory. I'm going to show you what backstory looks like, but it's basically, who are you? Who are you trying to talk to? What are you trying to do? What is your goal? What is the context behind what success will look like? Now, there's a couple different ways to get that backstory. You can sit down and type it all up. I am clearly efficient, therefore lazy, which means I'm normally going to use ChatGPT initially to brainstorm, to outline, and to come up with a list of, well, I call them interview questions. Here's my reason to do that. I'm going to have to go to somebody who's not ChatGPT to get the backstory. And the backstory gives me focus. It lets me drill down into it. It also gives me vocabulary, meaning how people talk about it, not just leaving it up to ChatGPT. And so as you think about this, interviewing is the easiest way, even when you're interviewing yourself. Now, what I do is I'm looking initially for a list of questions to get to my backstory, and then I take and record my voice talking on it on Otter. I would almost guarantee most real estate agents and brokers are like me. You're talkers, not writers. And so the hack to go from talking to writing is use something like Otter. It's just basically transcribing your voice into text so I can paste it back into ChatGPT. And at this point, now I can give it a prompt and I can refine it and clean it up before I actually publish it. So going back to that, this is where the problem set is if you just get prompts and you do nothing else, and then you end up trying to refine it, which is basically, hey, the content's not very good, you're going to spend a whole lot of time refining because you didn't do it right the first time. This stuff right here, I can tell you, every time I spend half of my time getting better and better and better at what comes before the prompt. I've got it pretty dialed in. I'm going to actually show you my dial-in process, but I've spent a ton of time on what happens before the prompt. Sarah spends a lot of time on the prompt. Together, we make an awesome team, but if it was just Sarah or just me, we'd have a problem. And so that is the goal of why you're getting, Sarah would have given you the red meat, but the red meat may not be like, she would have given you the chocolate, not the broccoli is the way I like to put it. So what is our backstory? It is, what are you trying to do? Why are you trying to do it? Who are you doing it for? What do you want to get back? It's this like what, why, how, and now. I'll show you what it looks like in actual practice. So let's walk through what this would look like, and then I'm going to jump into ChatGPT. So let's imagine, for instance, that I want to write a marketing piece, right? I want to write a marketing piece to market real estate. Well, easy. I'll buy some prompts from somebody who will sell me real estate sales prompts, real estate marketing prompts. Excellent. Seems like a really quick thing. What I'm going to get back, though, is going to be very vague, right? Because my prompt is going to be something like, write a blog post to help a real estate agent attract more sellers. And I might put a sales page or a marketing page, which means you're basically going to zoom to the bottom of the funnel, just 2 people at the bottom, and it's going to be a pitch. It's not going to give you what you wanted. It's going to be a pitch to tell all sellers that you should buy. In fact, here's what it's going to sound like, because ChatGPT is going to go out and look on the web at how real estate agents make initial sales pitches, and it's most likely going to sound something like, oh my gosh, I just got my real estate license, and why don't you refer your friends to me and tell them to trust me, the brand new person who's never done it before, with your awesome house, your biggest investment. Now, clearly it's going to say that in a much different tone, but effectively it's going to say that because that's what you get back. Or it's going to be so vague that it says, come buy a car, we sell them. What kind of car? Well, we sell all kinds of cars to all kinds of people. That's not good marketing. And so this is what we're trying to solve for, is to instead say, wait a second, we need to start with what is some info. I need to tell it, who am I? Now, that's not a real estate agent. Who am I is, my name is this person. I come from this background. I tend to create my character diamond. We have a training on character diamond. You can go out and find it. My character diamond for my brand is a certain thing. It's professional, it's irreverent and witty and compelling. It's, whatever the case may be, I talk in this type of tone, this type of lingo, this type of words, right? Who am I? I'm this type of person. I show up in a certain way. If you just say you're an agent, you just said, I'm the same as everybody else, I'm average. But that's like marketing 101 is, we're not the same as everybody else. We want to be unique. So this right here of who am I, this is my uniqueness. If I don't tell it how I'm unique, it's not going to know how to give me back content that sounds like me. Number 2 is my goal. What are you actually trying to accomplish? And this has to do with, as clear as possible, of targeting. My goal is to help a very specific person, a very narrow niche of people, solve a very specific problem, right? My target and my problem. Now, the key here, this and the story you're going to tell needs to be from the perspective of the reader, not the perspective of the person writing it. The goal is not to get people to buy listings or to give you their house to list. The goal is not to get people to look at listings. The goal is to think about it from their perspective and tell the goal and the story and the problem and the challenge from their perspective, because then you're going to have that context inside of ChatGPT. The last part is context. This is where you actually say, I have a framework. Here's how I solve it. Here's what I have to offer. Here is my lingo, my terms. Like, in fact, this right here, this is my framework. So because I want to use this 7-step framework, I actually feed this stuff into ChatGPT to say, when we're talking about how you go about using AI, we use Ryan's 7-step framework. It is this. This allows me to plug in my own spin on the solution. So you can see as we're breaking this up, right? We have who am I? This is I'm unique. We have my goal and my story. This is a very specific person that's going to pull emotional content from how they think. And this is where I might have to do some interviews to get this type of data, a lot of times if I'm not the buyer. And then we have my spin. This is how I believe you should solve it. This is the framework. This is the strategy. This is the paradigm. This is whatever the case may be. Now I can enter in a prompt, and it's going to use all of this information I just fed it to focus in on the specific knowledge it already has, and to focus in on the output being what I would do if I typed it up. So hopefully you understand, if you don't add in your uniqueness, if you don't tell the story of the person reading, and if you don't come up with your own solution or spin for how you're going to solve it, then you're just going to get random vague stuff. Sometimes it might be great. Sometimes it might totally suck. But even when it's great, it most likely is the same thing that your competitor is going to use. And so it's going to have a very short shelf life. So these 3 parts, the next part, this refining. How do I go about changing it? So I have a rule of thumb here. For me, think about this as far as how important the content is. The more important it is, the longer this conversation is going to get before I get to something that I can actually use. Now, how do you grade importance? It's how many people are going to see this? How hard is it to fix if it's wrong? Like, how bad is it? How bad could get, we call it a nastiness level. And so the more nasty that the piece of content could be, meaning like I'm going to blast to 100,000 people, that's pretty nasty. If I'm email blasting, I can't get it back. I'm going to print 1,000 door hangers. Hey, that could be nasty. It's hard to fix. But at least, hey, at least I'll see them and not send them out. And so that's what you're trying to think of. The more important this is, or the more potentially nasty it is if it goes bad, the more time you should spend on this backstory. Now I'm going to show you there's some cool stuff that will help you jump through it as we jump into ChatGPT. And so I'm going to jump over to ChatGPT. We will follow up when you registered with this deck and a recording to it, so you don't have to worry about that. But I'm going to switch over my screen share here and actually show you like the actual real how I go about doing it. So we're going to jump over into here, and I got to clean up my screen really quick. We are at 4:34. So again, our goal today, the first hour was very much theory. And I know that nobody wants to hear that because we want the easy solution. But I'm telling you, if you want to be healthy, you got to eat the broccoli along with the chocolate. So I'm going to fire up ChatGPT, and I'm going to give you kind of the way you think about this. Okay. So don't think about this like this is some amazing AI or the future or anything like that. Just think about like this is your employee. And in fact, it's a whole team. In fact, if I go and look, I could go over to my inbox right now and I have my chat of all my employees. So think about it like it's your chat string of your employees or your text strings with all the different people you talk to in any given time, or your Slack thread. Just really think about it. Here's the way why I'm saying that. Number one, if I open up a brand new thing here and I just say, can you help me create a slideshow to teach real estate agents how to use ChatGPT? I literally started a brand new conversation with the smartest person on earth who has zero context. They don't know who I am. They don't know what the problem is and what the pain is. They don't know how I'm trying to be unique and solve it. I just literally asked them for a slide deck. I'm going to get back 8 slides, right? How can they use it now? It isn't terrible, right? Now, luckily, because this is a slide deck, I could turn this into a blog post and let it write it. And again,
Right. Are you wanting us to see your screen?
Oh, can you not see it?
We can't see the ChatGPT.
Hang on. Oh, I know why. 1 second. Gosh, just failing today. Sorry, Sarah.
No, that's all right. While you're doing that, I just want to attest that like I have done this before, and like as we first started, it was such generic content that we were getting back, and I just am giving a testimonial that it's well worth the time and energy that you put in at the beginning, so that you get such better content back.
Yeah, and I would say no matter what you're using, any type of AI is going to be, number one, half of them are going to be built on top of ChatGPT. So if you're using Jarvis or Jasper or any of those captions, and probably running on ChatGPT, number one. Number two, they're all going to approach it from the same concept. It's super sexy for them to demo this by just throwing in, can you help me create a slideshow? And this stuff coming back out of here's 8 slides, right? If I tell it to turn it into a blog post, it's going to turn it into a blog post. Now, you might read this blog post and be like, it's good enough. Good enough is the kind of thing that is clickbait. Clickbait is good enough. If I just write a witty title and get you to land there, and the content is vague, even though it might still be accurate, it's not engaging. And if my goal with my content is to turn strangers into people who know, like, and trust me, then I need to give them something to know, like, and trust. Sorry, I just got to make sure this, there we go. All right. So that's our first kind of lesson about ChatGPT. While yes, you could be, so again, using my rule of thumb, if I was going to send this as an email saying this is an example of what ChatGPT could do, well, that's not very nasty, right? I mean, I'm going to send it to one person. I'm going to send it to Sarah. I can change it. I'm just giving her an example. Hey, go ahead, full send. I'm 2 prompts in, send it. If I'm going to post this on my blog, or better yet, send it to 60,000 real estate agents, I can tell you that I'm not going to use this content right here. Going back to it, I allowed ChatGPT, this brand new employee in this conversation, to make a bunch of assumptions. And that's basically what you're doing when you just throw a prompt. You're saying, make a bunch of assumptions based on an overwhelming amount of information. For me, I'm almost always looking to be the disruptor in an industry, which means my approach is going to be different than the best practice, or different than the status quo. Well, here's the problem. ChatGPT, its database is by definition the status quo, because it's going to look at all the information of how everybody's doing things and assume that you want to do it just like them. So this is where we start to run into problems of doing it. So that was, rule number one. You start a chat. Think about it when you start a chat like it is a blank screen with brand new employee. You're going to have to feed it the context. Now that means I could come back. I was writing some content about a 4-day work week and how to teach people how to do it. I can come back to this chat thread and ask it a question, and it will use that previous context. What does that mean? Well, I want to create these chats over here based on subject matter. And for me, subject and target. So you can see over here, in fact, you have to keep scrolling, all the sheer numbers of chats that I have in here, because each one to me is a subject. And I will constantly go back and go, oh, I need to write some content for HR people about being an AI genius. Let me click on that and jump back into it, right? That lets me, just like I would with an employee in Slack, I'm jumping into the who. The who is always going to be my AI person. And so instead of thinking about the who like the employee, I organize this based on two things. It is the topic and the target. So almost all my stuff over here is going to be organized by the topic and the target. And so that's the way I'm thinking about it. I want to have a whole bunch of chats over here that give me the topic and the target. ChatGPT for real estate. In fact, now I can change this. I can edit it and call it whatever I want. Hit save and it will be there for me. So that's kind of rule number one. Rule number two, if I jump back to the main screen, there's a couple add-ons so that everybody can hear or knows what I have. I have ChatGPT Plus. It's $20 a month. I don't know that I think that I get a few extra features, but the bigger thing is I get priority of when I'm running my flow. Number one. Number two, I have this web chat GPT extension. What this allows me to do is go out and grab stuff off the internet. And I'll show you kind of what that looks like in a second here. Number three, I use Otter, which I use over here and I also have the Otter app on my phone. And that's kind of, now there's a bunch of other tools, and Sarah will record some follow-up to this as far as like what to do when you get, the text down. Are you going to send it via email? Well, what email do you use? If you're going to turn it into a video, what apps do you use for creating scripts and creating a teleprompter and doing all that kind of stuff? There's a ton of other stuff you can do once you get really good content. But today we're just focused on the content and specifically getting really good content. So for me, I have those parts. The other thing is, let me refresh here and I'll come back to a new chat. There are different models here. ChatGPT 3.5 is the fastest. 4 is much slower, but you can see kind of the reasoning and conciseness is higher than when we go back to ChatGPT 3. So what does that mean? You're going to have to wait for it to work for you. And it doesn't always like you tabbing into another tab while it works. So just know that sometimes you may have to just kind of let it flow. So I'm going to use 3.5 for this kind of example. So for me, so that was number one. I'm treating this like it's an employee. And I actually like to actually talk to it like it's a brand new employee of like, hey, can you help me create? And so I'm just going to start off a conversation. Hey, can you help me create? Let's go back. What were the main in the chat? I'm just going to open up chat really quick and see our main concerns we said was lead generation was on there, retaining teams. I'm just looking through lead generation for myself, leads for team, but they're not following up. All right, so excellent. So if I said that, I might come up and say, I want to create can you help me create a lead generation strategy for my real estate agents that depend on me for leads and mentorship, right? So I'm going to hit enter, just hit enter, and it's going to respond back. I literally don't care what it says. We're starting this conversation, right? And so it's regurgitating. This is basically like, based off of this, let me tell you what I could help you do. Define your target audience, create valuable content, use social media, use paid advertising. Yeah, well, of course. Now, if I wanted to actually start doing that, like going deeper than that, then I need to feed it again back more of the context. So I might say, you know, my name is Sarah Montana, and I run a luxury focused real estate right? Now I've given it a little bit more context. I'm starting to dial this in, which means its responses are starting to get more specific. Now, I don't want to type all that up. And so I might do something like, I think that the best marketing is unique and compelling. Because of that, it should be all about my brand and story and tone, and focused on a narrow niche of people with specific pain. Now, that's basically like forcing it to narrow in. And now I'm going to ask the money question here, which is create a list of interview questions that I could answer in order to provide you with the context needed to create a truly unique lead generation plan targeting a specific and narrow niche in the real estate world, right? Now what I'm doing is literally saying what, and this is because humans need this help. Now I have these written down somewhere and I've made my own over the years, but I'm basically saying, like, tell me some questions that you would like to know, right? Can you tell me about your background, how you got into real estate, especially the luxury market? What sets your real estate team apart from other luxury teams in St. George? Can you describe your ideal client in terms of demographics, psychographics, pain points? What are some common misconceptions or challenges? How do you approach? Now, what am I going to do with that? I'm literally going to open up Otter. I'm going to click, hang on, I'll show you here. Oh, I'm going to click the little record button that says new recording. And this is now going to record me talking through this. So what am I going to do? I'm actually going to interview myself. Now, if I was doing this for somebody else, I would go interview them on Zoom. So for instance, if I was writing content for Sarah, I would sit Sarah down on Zoom and interview her and say, hey, Sarah, can you tell me about your background, how you got into real estate, specifically in the luxury market? Now, it's important, even when you're interviewing yourself, that you state the question, then the answer, and I'll show you why. So let's imagine that I'm just going to answer a couple of these. And so I might say, can you tell me about your background and how you got into real estate, especially in the luxury market? And so I might, my answer is, well, I moved in St. George and the luxury market is a really cool market to be in. Clearly, housing prices are higher, so my commissions are higher, but more importantly, it had more to do with the type of people I wanted to sell to. The target audience of people I wanted to sell to were people coming to buy a vacation home here in St. George, Utah, or retiring and moving here as a part-time home. Because of that, most likely they're looking for luxury real estate. And so therefore, that's kind of my focus. Now, what sets your real estate team apart from other luxury teams in St. George, Utah? Well, really quite simple. We focus on people transitioning into town. They're either transitioning into town because they come here and visit a lot, they enjoy the recreation here, so they want to get a second home here, or they're transitioning into town because they're retired and moving here, or they're transitioning into town because they got a job here. Those are my three things. Now, let me stop right there. I would stop at that point and go, oh crap, I have 3 clients. Those are 3 different personas. So based off of that, I would stop my recording and go, I'm going to record one of this flow for each of those 3 personas. My goal would be to come over here and have it say luxury real estate, vacationers, luxury real estate, second home, luxury real estate, retired people, luxury real estate, whatever. And so while some of my answers will be the same, as I jump into what are some of the misconceptions and challenges, how do you approach providing excellent customer service? Can you share a success story? You can see if I was just saying, I help sellers of luxury homes, or I help buyers of luxury homes, that my answers would be, it depends. And anytime you find yourself saying it depends or being overly vague, most likely it means you should segment, especially when it comes to marketing content. But the same thing goes for if I want to create a training program for salespeople. If I said create a training program for sales agents, I could do that, but that's assuming they're all the same. And the more specific I get, the better that training program will be. And so this right here of saying, tell me, I told it what I'm trying to do. I was as specific as possible. Now I said, give me a list of questions. I interview myself. And at that point, I can come in. I'm just going to stop this recording. I can jump over here into Otter and refresh this page. I should be able to see my conversations. And here's the conversation I was recording. Now, I do a lot of this back and forth between my phone and my device. And so I could literally just grab this and come back over and say, here is the transcript of my interview. Can you use this information to give you more context? And I'm literally going to just paste the whole thing in. Now, clearly, if I wanted to get better and better at this, if I was handing it off, I might actually take that, clean it up, break it into question, answer, make it easier for it to consume. It seems to be pretty good. But so you can see this. Oh, cool. Based on the information, your target audience is this kind of stuff. And so I might go, oh, crap, I should break this up. Let's break up the interview into 3 interviews, 1 for each target persona. And now it's going to come back with a new list of questions, right? Second home buyers. Here's persona number 1, persona number 2, persona number 3. Now, what's funny is you see what we're doing here is a whole lot of backstory. And I bet nobody's ever showed it to you this way. But this is what happens when you're just like an elitist when it comes to quality of content. And the reason why content matters is when it comes to actually getting in, getting marketing, getting lead gen. Just so you know what it takes to get $100 million in total revenue over a 15-year period, it takes hundreds and thousands of leads. I generated thousands and thousands and thousands of leads for very little money because I would be very deliberate about who's my target. Is it narrow enough? Did I give enough backstory about them? Can I speak to their pains in their own vocabulary? And am I very clear about my unique way that I help solve it? Those 3 parts. And that's basically what we're doing here, right? And so I would interview myself again and plug that information in, right? And so I'm literally just going back and forth, feeding it better and better information before I actually get into saying, okay, great. I want to focus this on second home buyers who are looking for a winter hotspot to play pickleball. And St. George, Utah is the place. Most of them come through town and play, staying at a hotel or Airbnb. But now they are doing it consistent. Right? Now, I might unpack some of the pains. I might really go deep. If this was me, I would be like, their pains are X, Y, and Z. Or I could ask it, what are some of the pains that these buyers would have in staying in a hotel versus owning their own place, right? And so this is getting it to fill in the backstory versus me doing it. Now, there's a couple other tricks here to get some of this backstory. This is where this one kicks in. And so this says, go do a Google search. And so I might say, research benefits of buying a vacation home in St. George, Utah versus Airbnb or a hotel. This is going to run the search on Google. So it's going to actually come back and say, oh man, let me tell you what the internet is telling me. Here's all the benefits of et cetera, et cetera. So you can see I'm loading up this backstory content. At this point, I've now set the stage that, number one, if I give a vague prompt, it's actually saying, hey, you can look at all the information in the world, but specifically focus on the stuff above because I just narrowed you in on the focus. Now, I might come in though and say, my approach to helping them is what I call the pickleball players guide to Southern Utah, right? And so that's my approach. I might actually go record myself. So I was doing a web search, so I need to undo this, right? And so it's pulling all pickleball stuff, which I could do. I could say pull pickleball stats. So if I really wanted to do, this is a very narrow piece of content, but I could say pickleball stats for St. George, Utah, and it's going to pull back any stats that are there, right? It's telling them how many, et cetera, et cetera. It's bringing back this stat. So now I've got the context and I say, okay, I want to come up with some witty titles for a resource guide to offer to people about moving to St. George for pickleball, right? And so now I'm drilling back down. It's okay if you have to leave. We've got it recorded. We'll send it out. And so now I'm drilling down from the top down. I've set my target. I've set my context. I maybe fed it some information. I might look at this and be like, no, I don't like the title of this. Change it to something else, et cetera, right? And so I might say this right here is the guide I want to create. I want to write a book on titled this. There's the title. Come up with 12 witty and compelling chapter headings. Now, here's just the note here. The reason why I'm saying I want to write a book, you might be looking at this saying, I don't want to write a book. I just want to write a blog post. Here's the thing. When you're targeting the top of the funnel, when you're doing educational, thought leadership, value type marketing, it's about education, not selling. And so because of that, while you might be using the content for marketing, if you tell ChatGPT it's marketing, it's going to come across very pitchy. And so my hack for that is to be focused on educational and witty, or write a book, or create a webinar, or create a training guide, or a how-to manual, or something like that. Even though I'm going to use that as blog posts or articles or emails or whatever, but it's forcing ChatGPT to focus on education, not selling. Trust me, if you lead with value and education, then you can come back with, write me a follow-up email to, to call them to act by downloading it. And it will give you a much more pitchy thing. It's actually very easy to get pitchy content out of ChatGPT. It's very difficult to get educational content. And so you can see, here are the subjects. Now I might say, let's switch these over into witty blog posts for my blog that I can also share. And so now it's going to give me titles, right? Cool. This just gave me the title for my blog post that I can then use and you see how specific these are from Novice Pro, how to look, this one has nothing to do with real estate, but it has to do with the subject matter that my target audience cares about. And a lot of times that is, if you think about the elevator pitch, I might come up with, create a witty and compelling elevator pitch about what I do as a local relocation guide for pickleball. Right? This is going to help me drill down into my elevator pitch. Are you a pickleball enthusiast, retiree, looking to relocate? Blah, blah, look no further as a local relocation guide. Now, technically, Sarah's a real estate agent, but I can tell you, most of her people think that she helps them move here and come visit her. Because at the top of the funnel, that's her value she's providing for free. Finding the perfect home, to connecting you with the best pickleball courts in the area. I've got you covered. So you can see here, now I've got where I'm starting to say, here's who I am. I just happen to sell real estate. But what I really do is help people who come to town because I own an Airbnb, I have cars on Turo, I have guides about hikes and where pickleball courts are at and what restaurants to eat at and best places to stay. So I really am setting the tone for my content that I put on a blog or a podcast or share on social media that says, this is who I am. Now, here's the key with niching, especially in the real estate world. like, it's okay to sell to anybody when they come to you, but when you're going to them, you need to be focused on a niche and stack those niches up, not try to broad shotgun everybody. And that's what this is focusing on. So at this point, because I've loaded up all this stuff, I can now go buy a prompt of how to create blog posts. I could just cram in a prompt that says, please use a witty tone or an irreverent tone or whatever the case may be to write me a blog post, and it would write me that post. Now I'm going to have to think about what I'm asking for. So again, I tend to use more education terms than sales or marketing terms, because saying write an article is different than a blog post, and saying a blog post is different than a sales page. And if I tell it to write an email and it thinks I'm a real estate agent, it's going to come across really pitchy, and that's not my goal. And so hopefully this makes sense as far as now I have these subjects. I'm almost always looking for a subject, so I can say, write the blog post using a irreverent and engaging tone, and put the title in. Now you can see what I'm referencing. I'm telling it, use this tone. I might like tell it, use it from, if this was an email, I'd put from Ryan to whatever. I might also say, well, this left up, so the tone is right, but I didn't tell it the flow. If I want to tell it the flow, I need to tell it what framework. And so I might have, what are the most popular frameworks used to craft engaging and educational travel articles, right? And it's going to come back with the names of the different frameworks. This is how I'm now going to say, create a how-to guide in a witty tone for these people to do this. This right here starts to give me my options. I could also say, you know, what are the most popular, compelling marketing writing frameworks? And it's going to give me a list of those. And so I'm actually asking it. Now I could also create my own framework by telling it, the framework I like to use goes this, and this. That's Ryan's framework. And then I can reference that. So now that I have this, I can say, you know, write a witty, an irreverent, and compelling, I can't spell, but luckily it knows I spell like that, how-to guide, post, article, following the AIDA framework, titled, right? Now you can see it's going to give me something very different than the first one. Now, sometimes on these frameworks, it actually puts the information in, which means I'm going to remove them. This is where editing comes in. I might decide, do I want to copy this, paste it, and go clean up on my own in Word? Cool, I can do that. I might say, remove the, and it's going to rewrite it, right? Now, at this point, I now have this blog post. I could just adjust it and refine it to get it to where I want. So refining it might be like, write this twice as long, and it's going to make it longer. Here's the expanded version. I might say, cut it down, add bullet points, make it a listicle, you know, do this, but also write it like Snoop Dogg was saying it. I can do all kinds of different stuff. Now that I've got the basis of my backstories in here, now I'm just refining, or I'm just creating more and more content. So now I have this blog post. I might be like, write 5 witty social media shares or introductions to this blog post for Facebook groups. And now it's going to give me those kind of intros. I could do a whole bunch of stuff from this point forward if I just keep drilling down. If I keep drilling down and I'm thinking about educating somebody on this stuff, I might say, you know, what are some of the top questions that people, let's figure out what the questions are. I could say, after reading this content, what questions would they have? This is giving me my questions for my FAQ. And so I might just say, you know, write a witty FAQ article to answer the question, what are the best pickleball courts in Southern Utah? And now it's going to write me an FAQ article. And so at this point, now all those prompts become powerful because, number one, I can adjust them by referencing different things. And number two, because I've given it enough backstory and context. I know we're right out of time. And so hopefully this makes sense as far as getting some value. I promise we will do a follow-up one that actually shows us going deeper into these. But I do want to make sure my number one goal today was for you to understand exactly kind of how I approach it. At this point, all those prompts that are out there, or literally I can just replace in what I'm trying to do, right? So this FAQ article is what I'm trying to do. This title is what it is. And so in theory, I could take this and adjust it by replacing this right here. Write a witty checklist for the question, right? I could say write a quiz. I could say create, a story about it. Write a fictional story about someone struggling to find, right? Now, I didn't tell it what kind, so I could have said witty. I could have done something else. And so you can see it's starting to kind of show this pain story. He's frustrated. He decided to make the trip for himself, blah, 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 right? And so you can see it's creating that content and that flow for me. So we're going to wrap up right now. I hope that you got value out of this. Again, shoot us an email with any specific questions you have, and we're going to start recording the follow-up videos to this and schedule some additional videos. But again, my goal for today was to explain. Now, I'm sure there's a ton of questions. Those questions you can shoot to Ryan at Refer.io or Sarah Montana at Refer.io, and we'd be more than happy to answer them. A lot of the questions most likely have to do with, is this content good for SEO? Is it good on social? Am I going to get in trouble for using it, et cetera? And so let me sum them up, because I always go back to that same exact concept. The value, I think I have my deck right here. The value of this approach versus this approach is exactly, it solves a lot of different problems. Number one, it solves the problem of, is my content compelling for my target? Yes, it is, because I went to all that work of loading the backstory. Number two, does it sound like everybody else's? Is it plagiarism? Am I going to get in trouble for using AI content? Again, your content comes out unique because you fed it so much backstory. You were so specific with what you were asking for, right? Are people going to read it and think it was a robot? Again, yeah, if you'd done left side, that's what would happen. And so a lot of those questions that people have about AI, it's not very good. It's too vague. It's not compelling. It sounds like a robot. Like, am I going to get in trouble from Google? Am I going to get in trouble from Facebook? Surprisingly enough, all of those questions are answered by simply saying, spend the time to do it the right way instead of trying to take the easy way out. All of those questions are answered because they all come back to the same thing. The getting in trouble, the it's not compelling, everything comes back to, if I send this email to you, or if you read this blog post, or if you read my social media post, I have this one very simple question I'll leave you with. Is my life as that person better off for having read it, even if I don't do anything else? Meaning, even if you never, I don't download your guide, even if you don't become a real estate agent, even if I don't buy a house, that is the bar that I measure my social posts, my emails, my videos, my downloads, everything, that right there. Am I better off for having read it without paying you money or doing whatever you want me to do? And as long as that's my standard, trust me, people will like it. They will press like, they will click and read through it. They will send all the signals you need to both social media and search engines, as well as email providers, that it's good content. And that's really what you're looking for to protect yourself from all those other areas is, how do I get my users to signal to those providers, from social media to internet to search to email, that my content's good, that they want to read it? And that's really the threshold you're looking for that takes you. So like, I never actually check my content as being, is it AI or not? Although I can run it and it will show up. And my reason is because my bar is so much higher than Google's bar, which is, are you better off for having read it? I know that even if Google sees it's AI content, but people like reading it and respond to it and like it, that it will train Google that says, well, apparently Ryan's AI content is good. And so that is the approach of this piece. So we're going to do some follow-up webinars. I know that you might have been hoping that you're going to walk away with exactly what to do, but I honestly hope you do. As you saw, I just wrote like 3 blog posts and some social posts that were unique and compelling in this period of time. Now, I could have written them in 5 minutes if I was back on it's just vague and I don't care about the quality. But now that I've spent this hour doing this part, it means the next blog post I write on this same subject is going to be very fast. In fact, cycling through all of these topics up here would take me, the better part of 10 minutes, and I'll have an entire month worth of blog posts. And so that invest up front to build the context, then prompt it to pull back your knowledge is the way to go. So happy that we had everybody come. I hope that this makes sense. I know that it might not have been exactly what you were expecting, but I can guarantee you this is the way to use it in a way that will make a massive impact on you and your business. And so this is the basis for all of our follow-up videos. So as we show you how to do specific things, whether it's in talent recruiting, agent recruiting, creating frameworks, creating training guides, whatever the case may be, all of those videos are going to be reliant on this one core concept that you drink the Kool-Aid on quality, not just quantity, on quality, not just speed, on effectiveness, not just efficiency. And so that is why we spent so much time in this initial one to really nail that home, is because I'm going to assume that the quality of the content that you get out of AI for anything else I give you, a prompt, a training, whatever, is based on the idea that you believe the same thing I believe about putting good inputs in to get good content out. So thank you so much for coming. We'd love to hear from you if you have any questions. Otherwise, we'll talk to you later. Hope you have a great week.